The first prophet of warning. The days grew heavy with heat and dust, and the cities of the children of the sky shimmered with false grandeur. Nuh walked among them quietly, observing the rising arrogance that had replaced the humble songs of worship. Gold and bronze glinted in every corner, towers pierced the clouds, and men spoke of power as if it were the air they breathed. Yet Nuh saw the emptiness behind their eyes, a hunger that no wealth could satisfy, a thirst that no river could quench. One night, as darkness draped the land like a velvet curtain, Nuh sat atop a hill overlooking the sprawling city. The stars, once guides to the faithful, now seemed like witnesses to the folly of mankind. The moonlight touched his face, revealing the strength and serenity etched into his youth. Then the sky shifted, and a voice descended, a voice without weight, yet filled the world with gravity. "O Nuh, I have chosen you among your people. Rise and speak, for the time of reckoning approaches. You shall warn your people of the coming flood, the cleansing that will return the earth to balance. None shall heed except those who hear with the heart." Nuh's knees bent beneath him, not in fear, but in awe. The voice continued, explaining the task with precise clarity. "Build a vessel of wood and iron, vast enough to carry your family, the believers, and two of every living creature. Teach your people patience, righteousness, and humility. Speak to them of the unseen, for the unseen is eternal, while their cities shall crumble beneath arrogance and disbelief." The prophet stood, his resolve crystallized. The first task was impossible to the eyes of man. How could one man, speaking truth to a world intoxicated with vanity, awaken their hearts before the storm? Yet Nuh felt no doubt. His faith was a river flowing deep, carrying him beyond fear, beyond reasoning, beyond despair. He descended into the city the next day. His voice rang clear across the marble squares, and his eyes burned with the light of a truth unseen. "O children of the sky, your hearts have strayed from the one who gave you life. You worship idols of wood and stone. You bend to kings who bow before silver and gold, and you forget the mercy of your Creator. Repent before the heavens reclaim what is theirs." Some laughed, some cursed. Merchants called him a fool. Kings scowled at his audacity. Yet a few, quiet souls who had grown weary of their own pride, paused, listening to the resonance in his words. Their hearts, dusty though they were, trembled with recognition. For decades, Nuh persisted. He built schools beneath the open sky, teaching children to read the stars as signs of God's order. He walked with farmers in the fields, reminding them that the earth is a gift, not a possession. He spoke with artisans, guiding their hands to create beauty for gratitude, not for pride. And always he preached the coming flood, the divine reckoning that would cleanse corruption from the earth. Yet the world remained deaf. Kings laughed behind golden walls, and priests buried the truth beneath elaborate rituals. Nuh's warnings were twisted into superstition, his prophecies into stories to frighten children. Still he labored, for patience is the virtue of the steadfast, and hope is the inheritance of the righteous. Then came the construction of the ark. At first, the people mocked him, calling him the woodcutter of delusion. They watched as he carved immense beams, joined them with care, and measured a vessel unlike any their eyes had ever seen. "A boat for a dry land? A ship for no water?" they jeered. Yet Nuh worked tirelessly, guided by the unseen hand that had spoken to him on the hilltop. His sons and faithful followers aided him, lifting timber, shaping planks, and setting the structure upon the earth. The ark grew day by day, a monument of obedience in a world that had abandoned the divine. Even animals came to him, drawn by a sense older than instinct. Pairs of creatures, from the mighty elephant to the smallest sparrow, followed him to the ark. It is said that they seemed to recognize his mission, moving as if guided by whispers from heaven. Nuh treated every creature with care, speaking words of comfort and gratitude. He built pens and shelters, ensuring that life, in all its forms, would survive what came to be. Years passed, the sky darkened, yet no rain fell. The people's mockery grew more venomous, and the king's threats more dangerous. But Nuh continued, for the unseen eyes of the Almighty watched over him. His faith was a shield, his perseverance a beacon. Finally, the day arrived when the first clouds gathered over the mountains. The winds began to stir, carrying whispers of judgment. Nuh stood at the ark's entrance, calling to his followers to enter. Families gathered, the faithful trembling yet resolute, animals lining up in pairs as the heavens prepared to weep. The flood, the final reckoning of a world that had forgotten its creator, was about to begin. And so the era of warning culminated in the dawn of salvation. One prophet, one ark, and the survival of life itself, preserved by faith, patience, and obedience. The story of Nuh was no longer one of a man alone. It was a testament to the endurance of truth in a world that almost forgot it. The air grew heavy before the storm, thick and silent, as if the world were holding its breath. The sun, usually bright upon the marble towers and the green valleys, now hung pale and distant, veiled by strange gray clouds that rolled like the tide of an unseen ocean. The winds whispered through the fields, and the birds vanished from the skies. For years Nuh had spoken of this day. For years the people had laughed. Now, as the first thunder echoed across the mountains, laughter died upon their lips. The prophet stood before the ark, his robe fluttering in the rising wind, his eyes fixed on the horizon. His sons, Sam, Ham, and Japheth, stood beside him, guiding the last of the animals into the vast wooden vessel. Inside, the ark was an ordered world. Chambers for beasts and birds, stores of food and water, oil lamps hanging from beams, and the faint hum of anticipation from creatures sensing something great and terrible about to unfold. Then it happened. A sound like the splitting of the heavens, thunder beyond thunder. Lightning lanced through the sky, striking the distant hills. The wind howled and the clouds burst open. Rain fell not as droplets, but as rivers pouring from the sky. The ground shook, springs burst forth from beneath, gushing torrents of water that met the falling storm. The people fled to their idols, to their kings, to their temples of stone. They cried for help from gods that could not hear. Some ran toward the ark, pounding on its sides in terror, begging for entry. But Nuh, with tears in his eyes, answered as commanded. The decree of my Lord has come. Mercy was open to you for centuries, but you chose mockery over truth. Inside the ark, the faithful huddled together. The roar of the deluge grew deafening, a symphony of chaos and divine power. Mountains vanished beneath the rising waters, cities crumbled like clay, forests were torn from their roots, and every echo of civilization was swallowed up by the flood. The ark groaned and lifted. For a moment it shuddered like a creature awakening, then began to drift upon the boundless sea that now covered the earth. Nuh stood at the bow, watching the endless expanse of water. The rain blurred his vision, but his heart saw clearly, for beyond destruction lay renewal. Days turned into nights without number. The ark floated across an ocean without shore, carried only by faith and divine guidance. Inside, life endured. The animals, restless yet calm under Nuh's soothing voice, found rhythm in the rise and fall of the waves. His sons kept the lamps lit and cared for the live cargo, while the women prayed softly, their voices merging with the rumble of the storm. At times, silence returned, heavy and absolute. Then the waves would rise again, crashing like mountains of water. The faithful trembled, but Nuh's voice steadied them. Do not fear. The Lord who commands the flood commands also the ark. One night the prophet ascended to the top deck and looked into the vast darkness. The moon appeared, faint and wounded, above a sea that mirrored the stars. It was then he spoke softly, his voice carried by the wind. O Lord, you are the giver of life and the taker of life. You have washed the world clean of its corruption. Let your mercy rise as these waters fall. Let the earth be born anew. And God heard him. Gradually the fury of the storm began to weaken. The rain slowed. The clouds broke apart like veils being lifted. The sun returned, pale but gentle, and its light shimmered across the endless sea. The ark drifted for months, its direction known only to the one who had decreed its path. At last, one morning, a faint cry broke the silence, the call of a bird. Nuh released a raven from the ark, and it flew into the gray distance, circling but not returning. Days later he sent a dove. The bird vanished for a time, then returned with a small olive leaf clasped in its beak. The sign was clear. The earth was breathing again. The ark came to rest upon a mountain, a vast and ancient peak that pierced the clouds. Its name would echo through generations, Mount Judy. The waters began to recede, revealing valleys and plains, forests reborn from the mud. The survivors stepped out from the ark, their feet sinking into soft earth, the air filled with the scent of renewal. Nuh fell to his knees, pressing his forehead to the ground. "O my Lord," he said, his voice trembling, "you are the most merciful. You saved us from the destruction that our own hands had earned. Let us build this new world upon your remembrance." The people wept, not from sorrow, but from awe. They saw a sky washed clean, a sun reborn, and an earth that glistened with promise. The animals scattered, each finding its home again, while the survivors built the first altar of gratitude since the flood began. It was said that angels descended that day, circling above the mountain in praise, and Nuh, the steadfast prophet, became the father of humanity's second beginning, a man who had witnessed both the end and the rebirth of the world.